The Finance Minister insists the fees-free tertiary policy is not a failure, despite reallocating a sizeable part of the funding to polytechs due to low demand. The policy, a Labour Party campaign promise, has been in place since the start of 2018 and pays for the first year of full-time study for school leavers and for those who have done fewer than 6 months tertiary study in the past. Initial estimates were it would cost about $350 million a year, but now about $200 million will be diverted due to fewer students taking advantage of the policy than expected. The government budgeted for 80,000 students when it first launched the policy, but that was revised down to 50,000 once it became apparent the uptake wouldn't be that high. But National has criticised the policy in the past as poorly targeted and says today's announcement proves it's a flop. Here's our political editor, Jane Patterson.
The government's gearing up for its May 30th budget, the Wellbeing Budget. In a speech to the Wellington Chamber of Commerce, Finance Minister Grant Robertson said ministers had identified about $1 billion of spending that was no longer a priority.
One example of this was underspending on the fees-free program due to enrolments not meeting initial forecasts. This funding, some $197 million, is now to be redirected to the implementation of the reform of vocational education.
He told reporters afterwards it was not an admission of failure.
Far from it. I mean, this is tens of thousands of New Zealanders have benefited from the scheme. This is simply a recognition that not all of the money that was allocated for it is being used. And now we've got the opportunity to put that towards a vocational education system that's delivering people with the skills that they need.
But Mr Robertson said the government could have done better communicating who was eligible for a year's fees-free.
It's not just about immediately what someone might do at the end of secondary school. This is a policy that's open for workplace training as well, in terms of people who've never studied before. And I think the Prime Minister has said that we haven't, perhaps got that message out, that it isn't just about post-secondary schools.
However, National's tertiary spokesperson Shane Reti says tertiary enrolments have been on the decline for the past few years, which shows how ineffective the policy has been.
It's a flagship Labour coalition government policy and it's clearly failing. We know that because the cabinet documents show that they forecast 80,000 learners in fees-free, and in fact by end of year it was projecting closer to 50,000, so a massive reduction in what they were expecting.
He says the policy should be thoroughly reviewed.
We've always said that it was money poorly spent, that it was poorly targeted. We understand the ambition of getting greater access, more affordable access. We understand that, but this hasn't been the tool to do that.
Michael Gilchrist is the president of the Tertiary Education Union. He says the policy has boosted enrolments in regional New Zealand, but agrees not everyone is aware it's not just for school leavers. But he says the union's thrilled polytechs will be the beneficiaries.
The government has bailed out institutions, but that is not a satisfactory solution at the moment because those bailouts often require breaking even this year. And we have been very concerned that we would lose critical capacity and the polytechs, through job cuts, would be unable to respond.
The Vice-Chancellor of Auckland University, Stuart McCutcheon, says universities have long been underfunded and better consideration needs to be given to make sure money is going where it should. He says it's no surprise the fees-free policy has not always helped the people it was intended for.
There is a general decline in the number of students leaving the secondary sector ready for university. That's a demographic issue, although it's not huge. The other is that there are very few students for whom a year of fees is really the limiting factor. Many students, particularly from lower decile schools, will struggle to meet the entry requirements for the universities.
Labour's campaign policy in 2017 was to introduce fees free at the start of 2018, then gradually extend it to 2 years free in 2021 and provide 3 years free in 2024. Mr Robertson says no decision has been made about whether the extension will actually happen, and it's a decision that does not need to be made this term. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Jane Patterson.